Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome back to the Bimmer barn. Today we're going to be installing stainless steel braided lines on my E60 BMW, and this has to be the best bang for buck performance upgrade you can do on your car to make it drive a ton better. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. So in front of me here we have two kits from StockTech. These are stainless steel braided brake lines, and there's a few different companies that make these sort of products, but you just want to make sure that you have both kits because most are sold either front or rear. So what we're going to do is go ahead and unbox them now. I'll show you guys some of the hardware, but then we'll install them on the E60 and take it for a test drive and talk about some of the benefits of installing these lines. Now what's nice about these lines is that they do have factory fittings, so that they'll go into those guided rails and they'll stay out of the way of the wheels. And then you also got replacement rubber caps for the bleed screws and even zip ties. And then these little what look like crush washers, but they're just normal washers. They go on this end of the brake lines. They came with the front here. This side also has a similar design, but it didn't come with those washers, probably because it'll go into like one of the body clamps where this is held in place, and this end will go into the brake caliper. But now we can go ahead and lift the car in the air, remove the wheels, and start installing these things. Now to remove or install your brake lines, on most BMWs, it's going to be the same case. It's going to be an 11mm for the smaller nut and a 14mm for the larger end of the brake line. And that's all you really need to remove it. It's usually held in on this little rail here next to the strut so it doesn't rub up against the tire. But like I said, 14mm to get it off of the caliper. And once you've got it off, go ahead and install your new one. Now, like I showed you before, the front line comes with this little washer so that the brake line doesn't fall through the bracket on the side of the car here. And once you've got it installed, go ahead and tighten down everything. Make sure that the line isn't binded up or anything. And then also I like to spray everything with some brake cleaner so that we don't have any leftover brake fluid that's gonna wear down the paint of the car. So now we're going to do the rear brake line, and this one's a little bit easier just because of where it's located. It's easy to access, and it's also a little bit shorter too. So same as before, 11mm and 14mm are the only tools that you're going to need for this job. Once you got the old line out, replace it with the new one, and then in a moment here, we're going to move on to doing the brake flushing procedure. This rear line actually does use a washer, although you're going to be reusing the one that came installed from factory. So just a little note there, that's why it didn't come with one in the package. So as you saw, changing out the brake lines is not that difficult in the front or the rear, and now all we have to do is worry about draining out the fluid. So since I work from home alone, I don't have someone to pump the pedals for me, so I like to use a universal brake bleeder, and this one by Schwab is actually really nice. It works on BMWs using this little adapter here, and a lot of European other cars that have this style cap, and it just basically pressurizes the brake fluid reservoir and forces fluid out of the brake calipers where the air was introduced. So what we're gonna do is pop the hood here. We have to remove some stuff up here by the engine bay in order to get access to the brake fluid reservoir, and then we'll top it off and then pressurize it so we can go from brake caliper to brake caliper and drain out the fluid until we don't see any more bubbles. So once you've got access to the brake fluid reservoir, it's pretty easy to do a power flush with this tool. You're going to want to open up the reservoir and top it off first and foremost. If you already did a brake flush recently like me, if you haven't yet, then you probably want to drain out this reservoir and start over completely with fresh fluid. But what I'm going to do is top it off and then put on the fitting for the power bleeder. And then we're gonna go ahead and pump it up to about 15 PSI. That's a pretty safe level. We're not gonna risk cracking the reservoir or anything like that. And now when we go to our bleeder valve, we're gonna start in the front. It's gonna release all the pressure as well as the air that's in the lines until we just get constant flow of brake fluid. So now with each of those calipers bled, we can go ahead and remove our bleeder unit because we're not going to need this anymore. We're going to go ahead and top off the brake fluid, put together the engine bay, and also reinstall the wheels. And then we'll go ahead and take it for a test drive. So some first thoughts are that the brake lines feel a lot sharper. I guess the brake feel is sharper. Realistically, you're not improving the braking distance of the car, for example, but when you do these brake lines, just the added stiffness in the pedal that you get, it's more like a on-off switch with the pedal, and it's less of a progressive brake feel. So I prefer that sort of driving experience. I think most people who want a sports car probably would enjoy this experience too. And it's also part of that preventative maintenance that you want to do on the car, because those rubber brake lines, those lines can actually tend to bubble, and when you press the brake pedal down, some of the brake pressure is actually causing the brake line to expand instead of going into the caliper and squeezing down on the brake pads. So definitely a great upgrade to do, something that I've done on a lot of my cars every time I buy one. And I would say, for the money, it's definitely worth it. 150 bucks is cheaper than you can buy a front and rear set of brake pads. So for all four to do that upgrade, really a budget-friendly option. So that's going to conclude our video for today, and I hope that you guys enjoyed watching. Doing stainless steel braided lines is definitely one of those must-have upgrades to do on your BMW. And if you haven't done it on yours yet, I would highly recommend it. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like or a comment down below, especially if you have any tips or questions. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel. As always, I hope everyone has an amazing day, and we will see you next time.